Hello, and welcome to another installment of a Lean Focus webinar series. This webinar is entitled The Untold Power of Daily Management, What Experts Won't Tell You. My name is Damon Baker, and I'm the CEO of Lean Focus. And in a few brief moments, I'll introduce you to today's speaker, Ryan Lysiak. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. This information is proprietary. We ask that you please not use this presentation for any other express purposes other than the webinar itself. You will receive this webinar recording in an email, and usually that email will come to you about 1 day later after the webinar concludes. And you may want to check your spam folder to ensure that the recording actually got delivered to you. And if you can't find the recording in your email, you can always go to our Lean Focus Thought Leadership page, which I'll talk about here in a bit. And you can look at all of our archived webinars that we've done in the past, but also all the ones we plan to do in the future. For today's webinar, all participants will be placed in listen-only mode. If you look at the bottom of your control panel, there should be a Q&A option for the Zoom webinar. We ask that you type your questions into the Q&A panel, and I will be moderating those for Ryan at the conclusion of today's webinar. We should have about 10 or 15 minutes, typically at the end of each webinar, to answer those questions. So please type those in as you think of those along the way, and then we'll answer those at the end. So with that, let's get into a brief introduction of Lean Focus. So Lean Focus, what we do here at Lean Focus is we help our clients build high performance cultures. And we believe a high performance culture is like a three-legged stool. And the three legs of those stools are the following: driven leaders who lead in a way that makes the lean transformation successful within their business. They have the right behaviors, the right ways of working. They model those behaviors for others so that others can take their lead and build followership. The second leg of that stool is guiding principles. So when we're making decisions about the lean transformation, we want to make the proper decisions relative to what we need to establish for a lean culture. So an example might be things like being fact-based, data-driven. How do we incorporate those guiding principles within our organization to ensure that the culture sustains and lasts? And then lastly is proven systems or tools, the tools that we'll use to teach others, but to more importantly, drive the changes needed in the business in order to realize the results that we're after. And like a continuous improvement journey, this is rinse, lather, repeat. You continually do this year after year after year to build that capability over time. So how do we unlock that with our clients? We do it via 8 practice areas inside of Lean Focus. So if you can imagine your P&L and your balance sheet, there is a tool and a set of processes and a system that can be aimed at any business problem that you have within your business. So for example, if you struggle to deliver on organic growth, we have a growth practice with subject matter experts that are deep domain experts in applying lean principles to sales and marketing to drive growth, as an example. Ryan leads our operations practice, and the operations practice is the traditional application of lean to the 4 walls of a factory. And how do we improve things like safety, quality, delivery, and cost? And what tools do we use within the factory? And we're going to talk about one of those tools today, daily management, to unlock those results in the plant. Moving counterclockwise, we have a supply chain practice, which is outside of the 4 walls of a factory. So the connections between our supplier network, including things like procurement negotiations, supply chain risk, build, make versus buy, logistics and freight expense, all of those things are covered in that area. And then we move around to innovation. So innovation in practice is lean applied to R&D and product management. How do we ideate better, more valuable, growth-oriented ideas, and how do we commercialize those as quickly as possible, launching on time, on budget, on spec? The leadership practice is all about unlocking the people talent within the organization. So it's building the right culture and tools around things such as the performance management system in your business, succession planning, onboarding and development, immersion plans of key leaders to ensure that the lean culture doesn't dilute over time. All of those are managed in that practice area. And then we have a focused solutions practice, which comprises our intellectual property. So many of our clients are building their own business systems, and they view us as a great option to accelerate that journey so they can license our tools and training materials. We have about 70 or so tools available in all these different practice areas that I've been mentioning so far, such as growth, innovation, and operations, et cetera. And then we also have software products that fit into focused solutions as well, which help unlock the results you can achieve, but more importantly, systematize how you do these tools within your business to create good standard work. And Ryan's actually going to talk about one of those today a little bit on how we do some digital daily management using some of the software that we provide. Then we have talent solutions. And talent solutions is really two aspects of what we do. So it's retained executive search. So we're placing leaders into organizations all the way from CEOs of companies down to managerial level, with the common thread being these are all people with deep domain expertise and lean business systems and have applied that thinking and can be force multipliers or accelerators of change by bringing them into your organization to get results quicker. And then we also do interim leadership where we step into the role and act as the head of operations or the head of the business for a defined period of time until that organization can find a replacement. The last practice area is private equity, which operates more like a vertical. And that's where we're basically working with private equity firms to unlock the value in the acquisitions that they're making. And we're typically working in all the other 7 practice areas within the businesses that private equity is purchasing. So we're involved on the deal side in M&A and diligence and pre-acquisition to ensure that the investment is worthwhile, doing a full write-up, diligence summary, and then once they acquire the asset, doing the value creation execution plans, things like Kaizen events and projects and training and things like that to unlock that value. And the difference here, it's a shorter period of time, typically 3 to 5 years, versus a longer journey in a publicly traded company or a privately held company that isn't looking to sell or have some sort of M&A events. So where do we do this kind of work? So over 8 years, we've worked with about 700 clients, ranging in size from Ford Motor Company, around 150 billion plus, all the way down to venture capital funded pre-revenue startup and everything in between. Publicly traded, privately held, manufacturing businesses, service-oriented businesses, discrete manufacturing businesses, continuous manufacturing businesses. We have many companies here that don't manufacture anything. For example, CAA is a talent agency, one of the largest talent agencies in the world that manages basketball players and actors and things like that. Brinks, which is the largest provider of cash security solutions, the Brinks truck, if you've seen that driving down the road. So to me, the moral of the story here is that lean applies everywhere. Lean thinking, lean principles can be applied regardless of the industry. If you have processes and people, most likely you have waste, most likely you have opportunity to unlock value in your organization. And these practice areas can help you accelerate that rate of change. So I mentioned earlier the focus solutions in the toolbox. So both in our practice areas and then in situations where we're licensing our tools, these are the tools that we're using and licensing. And it's not meant to have you know all the things on this page, but more meant to convey the message of the completeness and the holistic nature that a business system should provide a company. And it shouldn't just focus on one aspect of what you do, like operations, because if you think about operations, the P&L will look at things like cost of goods sold and inventory, but perhaps you would be missing tools that would help you accelerate growth or accelerate innovation, right? So that's why we have an innovation growth toolbox to address those processes and functions within a business as well. So what Ryan is going to talk to you today, we consider a foundational tool. And foundational tools, there are 10 of them. And Ryan is going to talk about daily management. And I like to think of the foundational tools as where you start as a business. And these tools are really function agnostic. What does that mean? It means that regardless of where you work, whether you're in sales, marketing, operations, finance, customer service, these tools can and should be applied to your function to unlock improvement, right? So it doesn't matter where you work, all these tools are applicable to your area in the foundational toolbox. I mentioned earlier guiding principles as one of the three legs of the stool around building a high performance culture. And I gave you a few examples there. So there's 14 guiding principles. So you can think of these as sort of like precepts or commandments, if you will, not to be religious, but things that really guide how we make decisions along this lean journey. So I'll just give you another quick example, stop and fix. So when we have problems in our business, regardless of what function we operate in, we should have a mindset where we stop and focus on the problem before we move ahead, right? And not put a Band-Aid on that problem and deal with it later on down the road. So with that, the intro for Lean Focus is complete. And without further ado, I'll introduce you to today's speaker, Ryan Lysiak. Ryan, take it away.
All right, thanks, Damon. Ryan Lysiak. I've been with Lean Focus for about 3.5 years now, which still haven't gotten used to being a consultant. 20 plus years driving Lean, learning Lean as an executive, as well as a manager. Started my career with Danaher Corporation after grad school, where I learned Lean in the DBS office. Then I applied it in supply chain and marketing, ultimately leading a business unit. I also applied Lean then at Waste Management, where I helped lead the supply chain here in Connecticut, where I live. Then I led a few businesses in the local area, manufacturing companies, P&L responsibility for both top line as well as operational execution within the factory. So within my 20 plus career, I've seen big companies, I've seen small companies, I've seen companies late in their journey, earlier in their journey. It really does depend. One of the things that I love most about my job is being able to work with clients' teams and help enable them to solve problems on their own and be a part of that team. I am not someone that just comes in and gives the answers, but rather leads the team throughout the journey. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is a tool within that slide that Damon just showed, daily management, and talk through some of the best practices and things that we've done here at Lean Focus. So first, we're going to talk about what is daily management. Then we're going to talk about why it's important within an organization, talk through some common pitfalls, things that could go wrong that I've seen go wrong within daily management processes, how we can help, and then where we suggest you go next. So what is daily management? We're going to talk about that. Daily management can be most commonly thought of as a scoreboard at a game that clearly and easily shows, are you winning or are you losing? Give some key statistics, maybe some trends. But most importantly, it's not wallpaper. It's not meant to just stand on its own as a fun fact, but rather it's meant to facilitate a discussion. Really think of it like that image on the bottom left of the team huddling around and talking about what is going well, what's not going well, and what can be done differently going forward. So really think of daily management as a process at halftime, if you will, where the coach is determining what we need to do differently and the team is reflecting upon what's working, what's not. Daily management has a cadence that is often daily, hence the term, but it doesn't have to be just every day. It can be more frequently, it can be hourly for say a production level board. It could be less frequently, once or twice a week for perhaps a sales meeting. The key though is to have a routine cadence like a diet where the frequency of the meetings is best adhered to what's most appropriate for the business. And then we stick to that diet and we reflect upon what is and is not working, what we need to do differently on that routine cadence. Next slide, please, Darren. So getting into some more details, it's very visual. It's based on metrics. It's not just based on subjective, yeah, we think we're about good or no, it's not working that well. It's quantitatively showing where we are and are not against a target condition. But then again, it's not just about wallpaper. So it's a collaborative process. You've got an intentional team that is coming to the board on a daily or established cadence that reflects upon those metrics. that are themselves prioritized. So part of the important part of daily management is deciding what is most important. To focus on the critical few metrics that you have determined as important to drive your business and are balanced. We'll talk about the metrics later on today. But it's a means to help you execute and know what is and is not working consistently. So day after day, month after month, year after year, helping you achieve your results and keep the trains on track. Fourth is extremely important. We're focused on the process, not the people. So this is not a process to go around and find out who is not pulling his or her weight, but rather one to objectively look at metrics versus a target condition and establish what needs to be done differently to address that problem at root cause without blame. So that's an extremely important point, and one we spend a lot of time talking to and coaching through, because that is a common trip point that people feel that this is highlighting their own deficiencies. It's not what this is about. This is about encouraging people to see the metrics and own the metrics, and encourage team-based problem solving. And that happens offline. We'll talk through where problem solving occurs, but it happens as a team that then is driving action, and that action is followed up on the daily management meeting. So there's accountability, but it's not about micromanagement. Some people think of daily management like, oh, you're just micromanaging me every day. It's not about micromanagement. It's about accountability. It's about ownership, so you can have predictable and productive and effective meetings. I firmly believe that daily management is the secret sauce for what great companies do well, to drive competitive advantage month over month and year over year, and ensure that they're achieving the results that they expect. Damon, next slide, please. So as Damon alluded to, daily management, there's a misconception that it's only for the factory floor. It obviously got its roots there. We'll show what a daily management board looks like in a little bit, but it's not just for folks out in the distribution center or folks just on the production floor. The businesses that I led, we had boards in engineering, we had a board in sales, we had, yes, production, but supply chain, we had HR, we had finance, and then we established a process where the teams, the main leader and key leaders from each department would, yes, talk about their boards to their peers, but then we would go around in what's called a Gemba walk to see each of these boards. And so it was a very collaborative, team-based process. It wasn't just boards where each department was reporting out to me as vice president, general manager. It was rather us reporting out to us. And so that was a key differentiator. An important point to mention within daily management was that it was not just each department, but rather a collaborative process. Next slide, please, Damon. All right, so what does it look like? So we'll get through and we'll show a picture in a second, but there's really four main sections. The first and foremost at the top is a quick visual. Are we winning or losing in 3 seconds? When you're driving along the highway, you just want to know, are we going the right speed? Are we going too fast or too slow? Are we meeting our target condition? And so you very visually and very quickly at the top want to establish that visual. Then the second layer is a little bit quantitatively how we're doing against our objective, and it's graphed as a trend chart. We'll talk through that a little bit more to see visually how we're doing in month, which would be on the right-hand side, and then month over month, which is on the left-hand side of the trend chart. So it's a visual about how we've been performing. These first two, although they're important, are not the reason to do daily management. This is what I call reporting the news. The most important part is steps 3 and 4, which is first, if you are red or when you're red, why are you red? And you want to build up that histogram or Pareto of reasons why you're late, or why you're missing your quality issue, or why you're behind on safety. And then on step 4 is the problem solving nature. We'll talk through what a daily management is and is not, but it's not meant to solve the problem, but it is meant to track the actions. So when we have a miss, why do we have a miss? And then when we have a lot of misses, what's going to be done about it? So we'll talk through each of these 4 in a little bit here. Next slide, please, Simon. So this is a picture of what a daily management board could look like, and I stress could. So each of the 4 sections is a row here. So row 1 is that visual, row 2 is the trend chart, row 3 is the why, and then 4 is what are you going to do about it. The columns then, the plus, Q, D, I, P, E, are then metrics that are determined by department as being critical for the business. They do not need to be exactly these 6. It's okay to have 5. It's okay to have 7. It's okay to have 3. It's not okay to have 17. But these are what the business decides as being important to focus upon and drive action. So Damon, on the next slide, if you go through what are each of the letters, what do they mean? Now, what they could mean, the plus is often a safety metric. This is most obvious on the factory floor. Incidents, hazards, have safety audits been performed. Quality is the Q, which on the factory floor could be things like first pass yield, but it also could be how you are doing things or not doing things according to standards. So engineering might be ECRs, for example, engineering change requests are things that you might track from a quality standpoint. The D is a timeliness or a delivery related on-time delivery. Could be, are you shipping product on time? But it also could be, are you entering quotes on time if it's a sales related daily management board. The I is inventory, which is obviously something off the balance sheet, but it could be something just a stock of, say, back orders. It doesn't have to necessarily be product that is inventory. Just think of it as a stock of whatever is relevant for the business for that department. P is productivity. Are you doing what you need to do efficiently? Units over time, completion rates. Those are things that may be tracked from the P. And then finally is around employees, the engagement. Could be engagement survey KPIs, could be things around training that again is relevant for the business. So each of these metrics are things that may be tracked. Part of the establishment of daily management is finding out what is important. So we spend a lot of time up front making sure we get the right metrics that we're going to act upon. I'll talk about that later. But then we build the board that may have, and I trust may have, some of these components per each department. So the next row, Damon, if you go to the next slide, please. The second row, so the first one is that visual for the Q, D, I, P, E. The second one is the run chart. So quantitatively, how are we doing versus our target? So if our standard is, in this case, 120 widgets, we would track on a daily basis. So think of this is as if it was August 16th. What happened yesterday? We got 100 versus our standard of 120. So we would list that. We would graph it on the right-hand side there. So a gap of 20. So we would track this each day of the month. So we could see some days we've actually beat our target, which is great. Some we haven't. We can see clearly the trend in month is improving, though there is some seasonality. So this picture is telling us a lot of things about the month. And then to the left-hand side is a month over month average production for that month. So we can see last month we're 95, the month before 105. So again, some seasonality, but this picture is also highlighting the trend that we see over time. So this gives us a lot of context, not just that we're red, but are we getting better? Are we getting worse? What's the trend over time? So that's the second row. Again, these first 2 rows are really about reporting the news. But Damon, if you go to the next slide, row 3 and 4 is what's extremely important to really drive the daily management process. So the third row is the where or the why the problem arose. So a little bit more context about where it is, again, by day and then the average over a month. So we can see for reasons why we're missing, again, in the day or on the month. And so this just has 3 simple examples. You can see, though, why this is so important to track is it gives you a nice visual that, in this case, material shortages drive a lot of the problem. So what may happen at the daily management meeting is when this long pole in the tent becomes apparent, it might be established to have an offline problem-solving session to drill into the root cause of material shortages, which the team might through that hour, 2 hour session, determine that the root cause is stale sizings of our inventory. So we might have safety stocks or maybe parts that are A items that are not on Kanban. Then would establish countermeasures, which, Damon, if you go to the next slide, the team then lists what the issue was and what the countermeasure that they determined that they were going to do, who owns those countermeasures, and this is a single person, not a department, right? The owner is not the materials group. The owner is Ryan Liziak. When it was identified, and then when I expect to have it done. And in the daily management, all we're doing is tracking that there is an action, and then when that due date comes up, what has been the resolution of that countermeasure. We are not, and I stress not, in the daily management meeting talking about the problem or proposing countermeasures. That's all handled offline. That's part of what makes a daily management meeting efficient and effective, because you're going to be having it every day or week. You do not want to have this be an hour, 2 hour long session. We'll talk through some best practices about daily management meetings in a second, but this fourth row is extremely important to drive action. It's the reason why you're doing the meeting. You're not doing a daily management meeting to just look at metrics. You're not doing a daily management meeting just to find out reasons why you are missing your metrics. You're doing your daily management meeting to really drive action and to collaborate as a team as to what we need to do to address the root cause of a problem. So this fourth row is extremely important. If you see a daily management board that's got consistently red and we know the reason, but there's no action, that should trigger the leader to probe as to why not and what we need to do differently in order to drive a resolution to the misses. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide, please, Damon. So daily management is often done first physically. So there's a physical board that is created at what we call Gemba, which is where the action occurs. So it's not in a conference room. The production board is right there at the value stream. The engineering board is right there at the engineering department. Sales board is right at the sales meeting. And then you have the Gemba walk process where you go about and see the boards at each and have the meeting. So that is really best practice. That is what we recommend clients do, especially initially. But there are some organizations which are global in nature, a lot of remote folks, that you want to have a virtual session. So we do have a Teams-based app in what we call our tool suite set of applications that Damon alluded to at the beginning. That this tool suite products happen for things like strategy deployment and Kaizens, but this one specifically, Control Tower, helps facilitate a digital daily management process. So you would still have, though, the layers of daily management that we talked about, the visual, the red or the green, what's the trend, why, and then what are we doing about it. Those all still happen just in a digital manner. And so this tool suite Control Tower application helps facilitate that process in a remote environment. Damon, next slide, please. So why is daily management important? So we're not just doing it for because it's a oh, Ryan and Damon said so. It is, daily management is what we believe is at the core of a well-run business system. There are three tools which we call the Holy Trio, and again, not to be religious, but those three tools from that slide that Damon showed of all of the tools that we talk about, those three really we think are at the core of a well-run business system. And why do we think that? Strategy deployment is your breakthrough thinking. It's the new objectives, new things, maybe new people that you need, new capabilities to drive breakthrough results and truly change the game in the strategic environment. Daily management, though, is similar in the sense that it's got an established cadence. So daily management is daily or weekly. Strategy deployment is monthly. But daily management is more evolutionary. It's more off of your existing people and your existing processes. Are you keeping the trains on the track and winning the game sustainably over time? Where problem solving comes in on both tools is when you don't achieve your target condition. So you've got a goal for the day or in strategy deployment for the month that is not being achieved. You would apply your plan, do, check, act logic against that and avoid backsliding. So strategy deployment, you have revolutionary large scale improvements, daily management more evolutionary, keeping the trains on track, and then problem solving is there to keep the results sustained and prevent backsliding year over year. Damon, next slide, please. So why do you need daily management? So if you think from the current state without daily management, you've got projects or initiatives that are done that improve your performance, but then fail to sustain because you're not tracking them and you're not ensuring that those results are sustained. So you've got backslide. So where daily management comes in is kind of the alpha and the omega of a project or a Kaizen event, where based on a target condition for established metrics, you've got instances where you might need to have a Kaizen event. So thinking back to my material example, you may say we need to have a plan for every part Kaizen, resize our safety stocks, put some more parts on Kanban, and that then becomes the genesis of a Kaizen event. After the event is concluded, then daily management seeks to sustain the results and ensure that now material is no longer a major issue going forward. So again, it prevents that backsliding. And so think of daily management as the alpha and the omega for a Kaizen event or any kind of improvement priority. It also can help drive some Kaizen on a daily basis that doesn't have to be a formalized event. So not every countermeasure is per se a Kaizen event. It might just lead to continuous improvement on a daily basis. Next slide, please, Evan. Daily management is also great about building a fix-it-now culture. So think of it as, the adage, a stitch in time saves 9. Daily management is that way of making sure that you are or are not achieving your results, and that you have an established owner and you are giving priority to the metrics that are important for the organization. Leadership plays a very important role to act as a champion behind these countermeasures and making sure that the proper resources are allocated to what is most important, and helping to enable the team to overcome obstacles and identify what those obstacles may or may not be. And so you've got a really good collaborative environment where problems are addressed and are fixed as they arise and not dealt with on a monthly or quarterly basis or as needed basis, and we're just running around chasing our tail. We've determined what is a priority, and we are dedicating the time and the resources to overcoming the obstacles to fix it now. Another great thing about daily management is it avoids that silo mentality, the tendency of departments to only look at their own metrics. Oh, I'm in sales, I'm going to look at sales metrics. I'm in engineering, I'm going to look at engineering metrics. I'm in production, I'm going to look at my own metrics. And then maybe blame the other departments. So you have that kind of silo mentality. Daily management is an excellent way of breaking down those barriers, having transparency amongst the teams as to what is and is not happening, and how they can help each other. And so both at the beginning, when we're setting up the daily management, we're making sure that we've got a good passing of the baton, if you will, that says, what does each department need to be successful upstream and downstream so that they link together? But then as the process is being executed on a daily or weekly basis, we are then identifying what some of the root causes of an issue are so that we can get ahead of it before it becomes a bigger problem in another department. So again, it's not a blaming environment. It's just a way of identifying where the department deficiencies occur, and we can address the problem at the point of occurrence, not at the point of observance. Next slide, please, Damon. All right, so what are some of the common pitfalls? Some of the things that we've seen that have happened that lead daily management to go astray. First thing I'll talk about is, again, the tendency to report the news, not make the news. A lot of companies will say, oh, look, here's our metrics graphed on a wall, nice trend charts, beautiful, but then fail to say, well, why have we gone red? And most importantly, what are we doing about it, right? Those are some of the main ways of avoiding the instance where we see the same miss and we're not getting improvement. Also, another thing that we've seen is people not applying the problem-solving PDCA plan, do, check, act logic to really ensure that their countermeasures are addressing the root cause. We are trying to avoid the firefighting mentality, the put a Band-Aid on it, kick the can down the road. We want to make sure that we've got proper measures that will both contain. Yes, when you've got an issue, you need to contain the issue, but you need to make sure that you're addressing it at root cause with good PDCA logic for the important items. So another misconception about daily management, we've got to solve every problem with PDCA logic. That's not correct. Going back to my example of the delivery miss, if material is the main one, we're going to apply our PDCA logic against that material deficiency, not the other two yet. When we address the material issue and that goes down, maybe one of the other ones bubble up. And so the PDCA logic is applied at the focused issues as they occur. Daily management meetings are different from most meetings you've been at. They are, if it's physically done, it's a standing meeting. They are short. They're usually about 10 or 20 minutes. So there's a manner of speaking that needs to be done to ensure that it's productive and it doesn't just drag on and lead to meetings upon meetings. And so that's a lot of the coaching that we provide both during and after the session, is making sure that those meetings are done correctly. And then finally is when daily management meetings kind of fall off and don't become routine, and we're going to cancel maybe because key people aren't here, or we'll pick it up tomorrow or next week. If that becomes routine, it's like a diet where you fall off and it no longer becomes effective, no longer becomes predictable. So in the meeting, in the daily management creation process in the workshop, we're going to want to establish who the primary owner is, but then also who the backup is. Because vacations are going to happen, sicknesses are going to happen, but we need to have a good backup so that the show can go.
Yeah, on that one, Ryan, using your coaching analogy, it's like imagining the head coach is sick, and because the head coach is sick, we're not going to go in the locker room at halftime to review the first half and make adjustments for the second half because the coach isn't here. And we're basically saying we have no interest in trying to win the game because the coach isn't here. It's kind of, we wouldn't do that, obviously.
Yep. Next slide, please. All right, so we talked about daily management meetings being short and effective. They're 10, 15, 20 minutes. We establish that cadence in a workshop, which we'll talk about what a workshop entails. But that daily management meeting is not where we're solving the problem. They're two separate meetings. Daily management meeting identifies the need for a problem-solving meeting and then follows up on the problem-solving meeting, what actions are being done. But that problem-solving meeting is handled separately. This is a common tendency for people to want to solve the problem in the meeting and talk about the problem in the meeting. That's not what a daily management meeting is about. So we're going to want to be efficient, and we're going to want to move towards what the action will be in the future. Damon, next slide, please. Another common misperception is the association with red being bad. People have tendencies when something is red to be offended, to see that is a personal attack. One of the big shifts that needs to occur through daily management is that adjustment of mindset that red is not bad, red is an opportunity. If it's consistently red and you don't know why and you don't have any action to get out, that is bad. I'm not implying that there's never a personal accountability, but it's okay to be red every now and again. If you're not red, you're not reaching hard enough. If it's always green, then you might be sweeping the problem under the rug. You also might be setting a low bar. So you are going to anticipate there being some red. And part of the importance of the daily management process is working with the team of people and coaching them around red not being bad, but rather find the opportunity for improvement, find out why and what needs to be done in order to get us back on track. Next slide, please, Emily. Other key thing that's important about daily management is making sure that you pick the right metrics. You're going to be focusing on the critical few. That's the F there, is you've got 5, 6, 7 metrics that you're going to focus on. So you make sure that they're the right ones. Right? You want to make sure you have a balance, that they're not all quality driven. You want to make sure they're not all delivery driven, because that might lend towards unintended consequences. So you do want to have a balanced set of metrics in that few list. You also importantly want to make sure that they're easy to understand. You might have a great formula that captures a lot of different variables, but not many people understand it. Maybe only a few do. That's probably not the best metric to have. You want to make sure that you've got something that is easy for everyone to understand. And then another one that's important to mention is you want to pick metrics that you can act upon. You want to make sure that when it's shown, are we going to be able to make a decision upon that? And then are we, the folks that are at the meeting, going to be able to be the ones that drive that decision? If the answer is no, then we should probably look to pick a different metric. And so we're going to want to have one that is the team can act upon and ideally be tied to their incentives, and we drive towards goals that have good context and are able to gain momentum throughout the organization. Damon, next slide, please. All right, so how can we help? How does Lean Focus, have we helped? How could we help going forward? As I've alluded to several times, we can establish what's called a daily management boot camp. This is not, and I stress, not training. We're not just talking about daily management and then going back to the way we had done things, but rather in this week, we are truly transforming and establishing a daily management process. We're building the boards, whether that be physically or virtually. And then most importantly, the curtain goes up usually the Monday after the week. So it's a Monday through Friday often that we do. And you can see the agenda we've got down there below, where we are determining what metrics we want each department to do. And this is a collaborative, again, think about passing that baton, where we establish what metrics we're going to track and which ones we're going to act upon, who's going to be there, who's the owner, who are the backup owners. Then we are building the boards, physically building them, whether that be creating the piece of paper and the laminated boards that are occurring in a physical environment, or using Tool Suite to establish a virtual process. And then importantly, within that workshop, we are tri-storming, meaning we are actually putting up a draft version, maybe changing it, putting up another draft version, maybe changing it again with data that we're gathering that week, and then rehearsing. We're doing dry runs of the daily management process, coaching how to do it, because there's an effective means of communicating this. Because again, you only have 10 minutes and everyone's standing around. How do we communicate that information? No more, no less than is necessary. How do we discourage any sidebar problem solving that occurs in the meeting? So there's a lot of coaching on how to portray the results, as well as how to be a good audience member. And we're doing a lot of that iteration in that week. And so this is a great way to transform your business and establish these daily management boards and process that will achieve results throughout the year. Other thing we do, Damon, if you go to the next slide, if you already have a daily management process, but you suspect it's not really being effective or done efficiently, is we can do an assessment of that process. So this is usually a day-long event where we'd come out and would look into do things like an audit and do an observation and recommendations to see if you've got an established schedule with established owners. These are all things that we would have put in place during a boot camp, during a workshop, but the assessment might be a great way of checking up on how that's going. Could be a boot camp that we've done in the past, or it could be one that you've done previously, to observe that current state and provide suggestions for improvement. Next slide, please, Evan. All right, so where should we go next? On our website is a listing of webinars we've got upcoming. The next one, done by my colleague Rob Grumsky, will be on Wednesday, July 17th for unlocking the hidden savings from utilities. That and others, both in the future as well as historical webinars, are things that you can see at our website. You can also sign up for emails to be sent you. We have something called Daily Focus, which gives you a concept and a challenge each day. And then less frequently, but more in-depth things like Lean Catalysts are great resources that are available for you on a host of topics. So not just daily management, but those are all things that you can see from our website. So in closing, I like this quote from Henry Ford, right? We're coming together, and that's the start. We're gonna do it routinely to stay together, and that'll be progress. But truly working and driving action is what's gonna lead us towards success. So I really like this quote for Henry Ford to talk about work in general, but then also how daily management can assist.
All
With
right,
that,
thanks, Ryan.
back
So
over
we
to you,
have
Damon.
several questions here from the participants that we'll get into. You ready?
Yes.
Okay, first question, how to implement, or even before, how to convince an organization that does not have a lean mindset to go to daily management and make them understand the added value of daily management?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would stress, I would look at what the current state is. So my recommendation would be based on the situation. There's no one size fits all. I would look at how you're doing it today, how the departments are or are not collaborating together, what metrics you are or are not using today. Do you have established metrics that with a target condition that you're looking at? And then if not, what are the results that you are or are not getting based upon that? So I would use a very forensic analysis of the results in the collaboration that is occurring, and then talk through the benefits of this process for helping to align those interests. And so this is a great way, as we've talked about, of doing so. But I would suggest starting with an analysis of the current state.
All right. Next question. How do you explain the difference between daily management and tier meetings? So I don't know if you covered it, but back on the countermeasure form, there was a tier column, tier 1, 2, and 3. So if you could explain the difference, or in your mind, if there is a difference between a daily management meeting and a tier meeting.
Yeah, great question. Daily management meetings, so it's kind of like a part to a whole, the way I think of it. Daily management can be done at multiple levels. So it could be done company-wide, it could be done department-wide, could be done specifically to a cell. So that'd be tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And so you'll often have tier meetings, but I would ask, what is that tier meeting, right? What is accomplished then? What's the agenda? Who are the participants? As to what is the difference? Because it might just be semantics, but there might be something different about what that tier meeting is or is not trying to accomplish, that would differentiate it from a true daily management process.
Yeah, and there's a number of error states that can happen there too. So for example, the tier 1, which is in our vernacular, is typically the lowest point of impact in an organization, which could be like a cell or a machine as an example. You don't want that level solving plant on time delivery. So deciding the right metric at the right point of occurrence within their span of control is really important, so that you're not having the same daily management meeting at multiple levels with the same metrics, and all of it just rolls up anyway. So it's like establishing the span of control at each one of these tiers to ensure that the metric that's been selected, metrics that have been selected, are actually something within those individuals or teams' control to affect. Otherwise, it's a pointless exercise. It all goes up to the top and linking in. And then establishing the tiers themselves is really important. I call it wiring the house. Once you wire the house, you do it one time, but if you wire it incorrectly, it's wired wrong forever. So the KPIs at the highest level is typically where you start, and they're more lagging in nature. And as I move down through the tiers, those metrics become more leading in nature, but they don't lose their connection. They're horizontal, but I'm walking back upstream in the value stream, if you're following my logic, the deeper I go into the organization. And if you don't think of it that way, you get a mismatch of disconnected metrics that don't equal 1 + 1 = 3, right? They're and can at worst be counteracting one another because they were selected in isolation. So that baton slide that Ryan showed is really important. It's like doing the boot camp in a collaborative team environment where multiple functions are working together and looking at each other's metrics that have been selected as part of their boards to say, all right, I'm your customer. Why did you select those metrics? I don't care about those things. I care about these things, and you should have those on your board. And then vice versa, like asking your customers, like, is this the right thing? Do you care about these things? So, all right. So here's a R&D question. So I'll preface this with, we have an innovation practice, and we have a person like Ryan who lives, breathes, and sleeps and eats daily management and R&D. So if we need to get offline question answered there, we can. So the question here is, how would daily management R&D look like, Ryan, based on your experience?
Yeah, great question. It is, so we've had engineering as a part of the daily management process with their own metrics around quality, delivery, or inventory for their specific world. And so I've seen quality being ECRs, delivery being, say, if there's RFPs and we need to have a response and there's a SLA, what's our performance against that SLA would be potentially the D column. I might be outstanding drawing revisions that need to occur. That might be something. P might be what's the timeliness of which we're launching projects. And the E could be engagement within the engineers. These might be some of the metrics that we track. And so it has to do with what is the issue. And as Damon mentioned, we've got an expert with years of experience tracking in a engineering department, and so we would build the daily management process based on what the needs are for the company.
Yeah, one thing I would add there is where oftentimes daily management is established by function, like operations or R&D or customer service. One of the subtleties of R&D is you might have daily management by project. So if you have multiple projects moving through the R&D function, and when I think project, I'm talking product development projects. We're going to launch project A, project B, C, and so on. You may have different boards for different projects where those teams working on those projects are meeting around that project and its performance. And each project may or may not have similar metrics depending on the nature of the project. So Ryan said earlier about like, this is a board, these are the metrics, this is what it could look like. Anybody that tells you that every daily management board should follow the plus QDIP board format, run away from fast because they don't know what they're talking about. And it also leads to why functional areas outside of operations can't understand or buy into this idea because they think of it as very rigid and not helpful, right? So you need to be really flexible in your approach to daily management, and whatever the function is doing, who are the customers they serve, who are the suppliers that serve them, what's the nature of their work, and then how do we measure that work to be impactful. Okay, question here. If daily management already exists in an operation, but it's not showing the expected results according to your standards, what would you do to recommend for upgrading it and take it to a more effective level? Would you do a Kaizen? Would you do more training and implementation? Or would you call lean focus? I didn't write that, the questions.
Obviously, I think the latter. No. What I would recommend is an assessment of that current state, whether that be done by if you've got resources internally that can view the daily management process and have some observations. That's something also we can do as an assessment. Is go in for a day or a couple days to view it and provide recommendations. But then based off of what is seen at Gamba, it might be a restart, a whole new boot camp. It might just be training individuals. It might just be going on site and coaching folks on how to have effective meetings. Or maybe the meetings are occurring and are tracking the right things. They're just taking an hour. So maybe we need to retrain some of the folks that are leading as well as attending the meetings on what a daily management is and is not. So I would say it's an it depends situation that starts first with an assessment of the current state.
All right, next question. Some metrics in our daily management are connected to teams' goals, for example, on-time delivery and production. And there are often discussions if these issues should be tracked or not because it has an impact on the achievement of the goals. Is there a recommendation of how to solve that?
I'm sorry, can you say the question again, Damon, or do you understand?
Yeah, so I think the way I interpret this is the metrics themselves are linked to performance objectives. And because it has an impact on people's performance objectives, should we be tracking it or not? So it's almost like a question of transparency, maybe fear by linking, putting something out there visible that's connected to teams, individual targets, goals, performance objective wise. So how would you solve the discussion around whether or not a team should use daily management to also help them deliver against their performance objectives? In fact, one of the 9 things you covered was linked to incentives. So if you can
Yes.
maybe cover that and why that's important.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking was you want to make sure that these daily management goals are not outside of what's tied to their incentives. You do want to make sure that there is close alignment with what each individual is contributing, both individually as well as in a team, and that's tied somehow to the daily management. You don't want to measure one thing, but then reward another and expect there to be alignment without tying it to the wallet. So
Yeah.
I would reflect upon how the daily management and strategy deployment objectives are tied to each person's incentives and make sure that it's clear what he or she is contributing towards the common goal.
Yeah, and I would come on that too. Is oftentimes when we do an assessment, one of the things we uncover as to why people aren't leaning in and sustaining daily management is because we learn that their individual goals and objectives are totally different than the daily management board metrics that they've been asked to either lead or participate in. So they being, I wouldn't blame them either if it was me. Like what pays me and gives me a merit raise is different than the daily management board. I'm going to go to the place that is all about my own individual merit each and every time. So I know it's an uncomfortable conversation, but you got to fix that. And it may mean going back into people's performance objectives and modifying them to align with the daily management board, assuming the daily management metrics are the correct ones. Or it may have to work the other way too, right? So there's a lot of unraveling that can happen by looking at this and determining the current state.
Yeah, great add on. I would say there's almost like an HR related exercise after a daily management boot camp to ensure that alignment occurs because people might
100%.
not raise their hand and they might say, "Oh no, I'll do both." But to your point, Damon, what they're paid on might get priority over what we pick in daily management, even though what we pick in daily management is what we've said is priority. And so we want to make sure that we've got that alignment. So yeah, there's probably an HR alignment exercise after the boot camp.
Yeah. This question is, how do you link strategy deployment with daily management?
Yeah, so strategy deployment is your breakthrough objectives. Daily management is your keep the trains on the track. Yeah, you're gonna go back to the slide. How you don't want to track the same things twice. So what is breakthrough is not necessarily what you want to track on a daily management meeting. You also want to make sure that the goals are realistically achievable. Strategy deployment, you're really, as the name would imply, you're reaching for a breakthrough objectives, you're stretching. Daily management goals are not meant to be that big of a Herculean effort. If you're running at on-time delivery in the 70s, there's no point of setting the target at 99%, right? You want to make sure that it's something that you can achieve. Whereas in strategy deployment, you might actually be saying we're going to go from 70% to 90% this year. Here are some of the things that we're going to design as new processes, new capabilities, maybe move some people into different functions. That's all part of the strategy deployment process. So that's more revolutionary. Daily management is more evolutionary. So they're similar, but they do not track the same metrics.
Yeah, I would add 2 things to that. One is you can use the daily management standard work and everything Ryan's talked about today to actually execute your strategy deployment better. And here's what I mean by that. So, like, rather than meeting once a month to talk about your progress on implementing a breakthrough objective, you could establish a visual board to track the progress you're making against that breakthrough objective and meet on a more frequent basis and engage in structured problem solving activity if and when you get off track versus waiting once a month to have that conversation. You can incorporate daily management like rigor to the execution of strategy deployment. And then the second point I would add is once the breakthrough has been implemented, the major process improvement, let's say this new way of launching products or this new way of selling our services, once that's been implemented, strategy deployment should morph into daily management, and it should now be owned by the functional team and owners and so on. And perhaps a new metric be established to ensure that that process lives, breathes, and sustains and improves over time, right? So things come off of daily management, things go on to daily management based on the nature of the business and the objectives and the priorities that are most important to you at this point in time. So there's another myth, which is daily management is static, meaning the metrics themselves don't change. They absolutely can change based on what the priorities in the business are. So that's how those two processes connect. That's it, 9 o'clock, right on the dot. So just a reminder to everyone, there's a few questions on the recording. So for those that didn't hear the introduction, the recording will be emailed to you one day after the conclusion of this. So you should expect that tomorrow sometime. And if you don't receive that email, it should be the same email you signed up to participate in the webinar with. Check your spam folder and add us to the approved senders list if we're not already there. And then a second option for you, if you don't receive the email for some reason, is just to go to our website in the Thought Leadership tab. You'll see the recording archived there, usually in a couple days, and you can watch it as many times as you'd like. So with that, thank you, Ryan. Great job. And thank you all that participated, and especially those that asked questions. Sorry I didn't get to all of them. If you have other questions, we can set up time for you to address some of those. And you'll get an email from us which has some information on daily management that hopefully, if you're interested, we can continue that conversation as well. So thank you and have a great rest of your week. Bye now.
All for your time.